This is Ron Klopfenstein, and you're in the hot seat on a Media Monday. Hi, everybody, and welcome to the hot seat on this Media Monday. I'm Ron Klopfenstein. Today is Martin Luther King Day, and we'll be joined by three members of the Oneida County NAACP, Aaron Woodman, Javian Dawson, and Dawn Laguerre. They'll talk about carrying forward Dr. King's message over the next 4 years. But first, in advance of Donald Trump's inauguration, members of 6 progressive and Democratic groups in this area took part in the People's Rally on Oneida Square in Utica, New York. It took place on Saturday. Participants in the rally wanted to affirm their commitment to fight to protect democracy, minority rights, free speech, bodily autonomy, housing and healthcare accessibility, bodily autonomy, and the rights of women. I covered the event for 95.5 FM, so right now we're going to start with my report from the People's March on Oneida Square on Saturday, January 18th in Utica, New York.
This is what democracy looks like.
So yeah, we are organizing a local affiliate march for the People's March, which is happening on Washington, D.C., formerly known as the Women's March, that really was born out of Trump's first administration. So, this is a big group of resistors that have been very active since, 2016, 2017. And we just want to make sure that the community knows that we are paying attention, that we will not allow rollbacks on Medicaid and affordable housing and all the things that we care about, environment. So this is just the first of many. Yeah.
Okay, I am here in unity with all these groups to protect my family, to protect my community, my neighborhood, and even myself from all the greedy billionaires in the Trump administration who are seeking to empower themselves and enrich themselves at our expense by taking away our services, our resources, our freedoms, and like I said, in order to empower them. And they want us to be polarized. They want to divide us. And to me, the antidote for division and fear, they want us to be afraid too. The antidote for that is unity and working together.
As a black person, I feel the danger of being a minority in this country every day, regardless of who's the president. But we know that with the kind of rhetoric that's been emphasized in this particular administration and this campaign season leading up to this, that it's something that we all have to be aware of. We already saw what happened 8 years ago when Trump took office, the increase in sort of open racism and open expression. They've really succeeded in shifting the narrative a lot to the right and a lot in a worse place than it should be. And so that's kind of what we need to focus on, is recapturing that and getting people to come out and speak to what they actually believe instead of being intimidated or scared by some of the vitriol coming from people.
And why are you here today?
I'm here today on behalf of the Club because we are thinking about the future that this administration is bringing in. But we are hopeful that if we would come together, we'll be able to stand a chance against change in the scene. We're ready to stand together because in the end, we all are in this together, even if they're attacking us individually.
Engagement. Civic engagement is more than just, government, politics. It's also about community work, charity work. It's about loving one another. Each one of us, we come from different backgrounds, whether it's a socio-demographic background, whether it's an ethnical background, or even if it's a belief or perspective. We all come from different backgrounds. So the fact that we're all here sharing commonality, speaking about the issues that we have here in this community, I do feel that this is a positive, and this is a great start, especially to 2025.
So that was my report from the People's March on Oneida Square on Saturday, January 18th in Utica, New York. That's just my report just now. It was organized by 6 area progressive and democratic organizations, including Central New York Citizens in Action, Indivisible, Mohawk Valley, the Oneida County Pride Association, the Oneida County NAACP, the Oneida County Democratic Women's Club, the Oneida County Democratic Committee, and the Kirkland Democratic Committee. The last voice you heard on my report there was from Javian Dawson, who's with the Oneida County NAACP. So, Javian, I'd like to start with you there. Welcome to Hot Seat Media Monday.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
I liked your positive message there. Why did you think that, what do you think is the most important thing that we need to put out there in terms of our messaging as progressives and as members of minority groups right now?
Well, I believe right now, definitely we need to put out a message of unity and also one of hope, because I do feel that, what's done is done, what's happened has happened. So now it's how can we move forward, knowing that, okay, this is the scenario. So what can we do moving forward to make sure that we continue to unite and we continue to look towards a positive perspective on things, and also to just really learn how to work together one-on-one with everyone in the community, and then also just how to exercise our voice and really exercise our power, our tool of democracy. So I think that's very important going forward.
So what is it that you think, what is it that we could do? And you have a new role as civic engagement, in charge of civic engagement with the Oneida County NAACP. What are some of the things that we can do as people, and then also as members of groups, to engage with people civically?
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, I did take on the new role along with Aaron and Dawn in the NAACP, where I'm actually the civic engagement chair. So my goal is to really kind of get more grassroots, where I want to work with the community, maybe people who are not politically aware or knowledgeable, and really work with educating the youth in the community on civic engagement, and also just being more integrated into this community, trying to bridge the gap between those who are extremely involved versus those who are not, those who have and those who have not, and just kind of bridge that gap between the two and kind of create a safe space for the community where everyone just comes together. So the way I'm looking at doing that, I mean, obviously I'm new to the role. We do have an election this year. It's a local election, so I think I'm going to start with just getting people aware of the local election is happening. And there's actually open positions too that people may not be aware of. So just seeing if anybody in the community might be interested in these positions, and then if so, showing them what are the action steps they need to take in order to run for that elected position, or even support that position someone else may be running. And then also those who are running, just making sure that they remain accountable, just keeping them accountable and holding them to their words. That way we're not electing officials in the office or in the seats that are not walking with integrity, or does not have the best interest of everybody as a collective unit versus just one demographic or one area of people and stuff like that. So I think that's a good start.
Yeah. And I want to apologize to the listeners here in advance. My cough seems to have come back from the Thanksgiving flu of 2024, but not quite as bad as it was on the day that I interviewed the symphony orchestra people here. But the cough is back, so I may be intruding on the show. Aaron, let me go to you now. So you're in your early 20s. You're a recent college graduate. What is your perspective on things? I look at what's happened as a big setback, but I'm also in my mid-50s, so I can see more of a long view. I think Dawn Laguerre, who's the guest today, can agree with that. We're going to talk about that in a moment. But for you, how many presidential elections have you voted in?
Well,
was this your first?
Actually, my first was back in 2020 during the pandemic. That was back when I turned 19 was how old I was when I first voted. And so this is my second presidential election. But I will say that I have voted in local elections too, like the school board, for example, which is really important too. As what Javian mentioned, this is another local election coming up too, and of course we're waiting as time goes on to see who's going to be interested in running for the school board. But that's a critical component of it. For the education side of things, we want to have people be aware of the fact that the school board is really important for deciding our educational policies and how how they're going to set the direction for what our school administration does here too.
At times it can be hard to interest young people or people your age, mid-20s. I mean, I think of you as a young person, obviously, in politics, especially that kind of local politics. It doesn't seem quite as maybe exciting or glamorous as like presidential elections or congressional, but what drew you to all of this kind of stuff? You're very involved in your community, and you're very involved in local politics. You're involved in so many things, and like, what instilled in you those values of civic engagement?
Yeah, so it started back when I was in high school. So I was in the Mohawk Valley Junior Frontiers. They're a organization that focuses on 4 pillars: academic excellence, civic service, professional development, and self-esteem. With the civic service and self-esteem aspect of it, I was doing some volunteering activities with the organization where I would help out the community.
The NAACP?
Well, the Mohawk Valley Junior
the
Frontiers.
Frontiers.
Yeah, the Junior Frontiers.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like I did some volunteering activities with them to really address certain issues that are happening in the community. And even in my school, I went to the Utica County Science Charter School, and I had done some volunteering with them too, like a fall cleanup from like the fall and the spring, and then food drives and clothing drives. Like they really address specific things, and that was like important to like set the foundation for like understanding that okay, like someone like myself can have a contribution in the community. And then like during my time in college, when I was like home during the pandemic, I was volunteering with the Junior Frontiers with pandemic efforts, like
online kind of stuff.
Yeah, and then also ensuring that like we were handing out like cleaning supplies and COVID masks and hand sanitizers to communities that are predominantly people of color, like the Cornhill area and East Utica. So really having that targeted outreach to them, and that really like showed like okay, this is really about addressing the health issues that certain people are going through here, and want to be able to help them out.
So you're someone who's very involved and very informed, and you have a good sense of like what's happening in the country and in the local community. What do you think about all of this, about the second Trump beginning the second term, and how are you feeling on this day, particularly the day of the inauguration and Martin Luther King Day?
Yeah, I mean, personally myself, I've been very focused on like the Martin Luther King celebrations because like his message is really about hope and perseverance, and knowing that there are going to be tough times ahead of us, and he even went through a bunch of tough times too, and I'm sure we'll definitely talk more about that later, because really there are so many reasons that he could have like had to give up, but he didn't. And I believe this like one of the main reasons we really celebrate his legacy is that he hasn't given up on the fight for civil rights. And even as like he is not with us anymore, we're still reminding people of that message. So I just want people to know like, hey, his message is about perseverance, it's about hope. We want to be able to stand united together. Like at the rally that happened last week, we want to like show everyone that we can be unified. We can have a diverse coalition of people to really say that, hey, we are going to stand united for people of color, for LGBTQ plus people, for women, for men, for all of us together, because we all have a stake in this, and we all want to work together to solve it. So any conflicts that arose, we're gonna deal with them together and show that we're all staying united on this. And this was like really the values I learned like throughout my early life in high school and college, and I'm bringing that with me as time goes on.
Well, I really like that philosophy. Dawn, I'd like to go to you next. I'm going to go next to Dawn Laguerre. You're also with the Oneida County NAACP, and you are in your late 50s. I'm only saying the age because I think it's interesting to like. I think that people our age, I know the way I feel right now. I'm very troubled by this, but and I do think that Trump goes to a kind of a historic extreme that Republican presidents in the past have not gone to. So the situation isn't exactly the same as the times when Reagan was in office, or George Bush was in office, or George W. Bush. But still, I'm trying to keep a big picture, and remember we did get through bad times in the past, and so I'm trying to think of like the long view of things. What are you thinking right now, Don? I mean, same question. It's Martin Luther King Day, but it's also the day of the second inauguration of Donald Trump, who got into office promising really to hurt so many people like that we care about, people like us. So I've a lot of feelings right now. What are you feeling?
Well, before I get into those feelings, I just want us to recognize Rome and some of the people that were actually engaged with Dr. Martin Luther King. There's a minister, Reverend Sarah Milner, and she was actually one of Dr. Martin Luther King's compatriots, which means she lived in Rome, she traveled with him, and she actually did some of the organizing in the South and continued to get people together. So a lot of times people don't recognize the folks that did some of the hard selling and pushing. And for me, since I'm a seasoned person,
Right.
this really soaks to the core of my bones. I was in college when Reagan got elected, and I remember crying because I knew times were going to change. Now, we didn't call it DEI, but I remember when he got in, one of the first things one of the first things they cut was financial aid. And right now, we hear the rhetoric of cutting DEI programs and status quo.
And some businesses already have, which is terrifying. He hasn't even come into office yet.
Exactly. But I find that an area of hypocrisy.
Yeah.
I'm in Alpha Kappa Alpha sorority, and we have something called legacies, as well as many other organizations, which means that if you have someone that has been in that group, they're predisposed to getting certain perks, right?
Right.
So when he talks about cutting DEI and preferences, I have to go back to the Skulls and Crossbones at Harvard, which does the same thing, which provides powerful people with money and connections, access to education and wealth. So for me, that's just one of the samples of hypocrisy. And what I really don't understand is that for folks that allege to be Republicans, one of the main premise is what? We keep our hands out of people's personal lives. So when I just saw him on TV about 20 minutes ago saying we only have 2 genders, you are so fixated on somebody's preference that you don't care to speak to the issues of
The economy, right.
inequality.
Well, Dawn,
Really?
we're going to talk more after the break. We're going to talk more after the break. Today is Martin Luther King Day, and we're joined by 3 members of the Oneida County NAACP, Aaron Woodman, Javian Dawson, and Dawn Laguerre, talking about carrying forward Dr. King's message over the next 4 years. This is 95.5 FM The Heat, and you're in the hot seat on a Media Monday. I'm Ron Klopfenstein. I'll have more after the break. This is Ron Klopfenstein, and you're in the hot seat on a Media Monday. Hey everybody, welcome back to the hot seat on this Media Monday. I'm Ron Klopfenstein. Today is Martin Luther King Day, and I'm joined by 3 members of the Oneida County NAACP, Aaron Woodman, Javian Dawson, and Dawn Laguerre. Before the break, we're talking about some of the concerns that we have and that many people we know have about the second Trump administration. So Dawn, I'm actually going to go to you first, and we were talking during the break a little bit about some of what you've actually already experienced in the last few days that you think is related to the inauguration. So why don't you tell us a bit about this? I want to make sure you're close to the mic, so let's pull it into your,
Okay, is that okay?
You go ahead there.
So I sit on a board that deals with a diverse population of folks, adult learners, folks that speak a variety of language, and they're trying to learn about adults. And I was so dismayed to find that my program manager and grant manager were at a program with these adult learning students. And mind you, this is 3 days before the election. They're in a controlled and what's supposed to be a safe environment, and we have ICE looking for undocumented workers. And this is 3 days even before the general election, and I find
Before
that
the
so
election,
disturbing.
too?
Yes.
Oh, I thought you meant three days before the inauguration, before the election.
Oh,
Wow.
I stand corrected. 3 days before the inauguration.
So you mean
Yes.
it was like this? Was this a Utica?
this is in Albany, and they're beginning to branch
gonna
out,
branch out,
and
yeah.
they're coming to Utica, and
Wow.
they're coming to other places. And once again, another area of hypocrisy. Look, I'm from New York City. A lot of the folks that live in our community in Utica had relatives from Italy, Poland, a whole lot of other ethnic countries. And when they got to New York City, they came through Ellis Island. And I'm going to tell you, they didn't have visas back then. So a lot of these successful folks who immigrated to have a better life are the same ones that are complaining about other folks having these kinds of life. And I'm particularly concerned in New York and Chicago, where we have a president that is intent on retribution.
Yeah.
And the reality of that situation is, he wants to punish Chicago and New York because he feels they didn't vote for him, but he's going to take it easy on some of those red states that depend on these undocumented workers who help make their coffers well. Once again, such hypocrisy. And for that to be his mandate, I don't know. How do you call as a president for civility, right? And then you tell people you're going to have a mass deportation immediately.
Yeah.
And then you wonder, where's that money going to come from? And what it means is, if we are to believe him, they're going to take money from the things we need. Affordable housing, education, and a whole myriad of other things. And I'm telling you, I am afraid. And the bottom line, which Dr. Martin Luther King did say, is look for people where they are in your area of discomfort. And the other thing has to do, we will be looking at folks who remain silent because they will be coming for you as well.
Yeah. Javian, let me ask you, so how do you plan to promote civility, and how do you plan to model that for your daughters here? And you talked about how important that is for the community. How do we all keep how do we all keep a sense of civility, and really how do we promote that at a time when Donald Trump is president, who really was elected to president on the basis of his really lack of civility and lack of decency? How do we say, no, that's not the way to be?
I mean, the best way to show it is through action, I truly believe. And I believe that, we have a great opportunity here in Utica, because I look on a local level first and foremost, because I believe that first you got to kind of get your house in order. And then whatever you do there could kind of be an exemplary factor to the world in the biggest scope. So, I mean, yeah, you mentioned my daughter. So, of course, it's just showing through action, we got to love one another, treat our neighbor as ourselves, and we got to love ourselves too. And oftentimes people would ask, well, what is loving yourself? So just showing these through action, taking care of yourself, taking care of the well-being of the people that definitely in need. I mean, we need to speak up for those who, like you said, Dawn mentioned the people with the house crisis and homelessness. So we need to look out for them, people that are in need. I truly believe that this is a great opportunity for us to really step up and really show by example how we could actually do it through our practices. And I think throwing events that are going to be geared around, the civility matters of this community, and then branch out even further to local communities even further away, maybe Albany, Syracuse, and then eventually try to do some big event for the entire state, So this is how I'm looking at it. But I think it starts small and we work our way big.
So, Eric, let me go to you. Is that your sense that do you think people will be capable of that, of coming together, and maybe groups that even didn't really have in the past always the same aligned interests, maybe will they be able to come together because we have kind of this, I don't want to use the word common enemy, but do you think there's going to be a coalescing around kind of the way that we saw this kind of explosion and this wonderful increase of civic engagement and of groups like Indivisible and citizens in action that had been around became a lot more prominent during the last Trump administration because it was needed more. I guess what I'm trying to say, Aaron, is do you think that like maybe a time like this will be sort of like ironically lead to maybe a period of more cooperation and more people, more peace and more people working together?
Yeah, that's definitely the goal. I mean, as we've seen last Saturday, like we saw a diverse amount of people together, like in how people look and how they think and what they do. And from what I can tell, I was there. It was around like 100 people there. That's good turnout.
And it was
here.
really cold too. There was a big crowd for a cold day, you know.
And it wasn't snowing either, too.
Right.
So and that's a good thing too. And like Javian said, like it'll start off small, but as we like have a more focused message on like what exactly do we want to accomplish together, and making sure that message aligns with other groups of people to say like at the end of the day we want our government to be of by and for the people, and we don't want to turn this country into an oligarchy. And what that means is essentially having our society controlled by billionaires and rich
what does
people.
it mean? Because you know, excuse me, listeners, I have to apologize. My cough has come back. So yes, we are getting texts. I'm trying to look away from the mic when I cough, or put my mouth away from the mic when I cough. But anyways, so Aaron, I'm going to go back to you for a minute there. So you were a political science major. You just graduated with your 4-year degree in political science, correct? So maybe tell people, what is an oligarchy? Because that's something that a lot of people are interested or looking up now. I wish they'd done it before the election, but now that they're looking it up, what are people finding when they look up oligarchy? And kind of what could that mean for us as citizens of this country?
Yeah, so an oligarchy is essentially a government or society that is mainly being controlled by billionaires, like rich people, like like the Elon Musk of the world, for example.
Zuckerberg.
The Zuckerberg. And you know, it's another like that's an interesting point when we're seeing like the social media companies like respond, like you have the Facebook. Removing its fact-checking system. You're seeing TikTok.
This TikTok drama is kind of suspicious, I think.
Yeah, and here's the funny thing. The error message that popped up saying it's unavailable, but we're looking forward to President Trump.
Don't worry about that.
Yeah, and you have to like really look into those kinds of messages and those signals by those like billionaire CEOs and people working with those.
Why do we have to look at those signals?
Because because again, you have to like think about the fact that they want to keep operating, and if it means having to give some like signals, like appealing signals to like the president or whoever's like in charge of your society, then it's going to be the way to do it. But the cost of that is really like, whose interests are you really serving? And who are like the government leaders serving? Like, are they serving like the people like us, or are they only going to serve people who are giving them like billions of dollars, essentially? Like, and I'd say billions to be hyperbolic, but it's really about who gives them a lot of money, because money talks in politics.
I mean, Elon Musk, if you like factor in all the ways that he is, I mean, all the ways that these billionaires do find to support Trump. I mean, Elon Musk probably in a way contributed $1 billion, at least just using Twitter to promote him, you know. Dawn, I want to go to you next. So Dawn and Javian both. So like, Aaron was talking about some of the signals. I know it's very, you know, early days. He just got inaugurated a few hours ago. What are some of the you talk about the Ice Age and so on. What are some of the other things maybe both of you are seeing, like in terms of the culture changing in really kind of negative and frightening ways, including like Facebook removing the fact checking, Walmart shutting down their DEI. What are some of the things that you're seeing so far?
So, I just want to add on to Aaron's point, and you know this as a journalist, if you've ever worked in JVR, you know this as a not-for-profit person. What really scares me when we talk about being insidious is them trying to shut down free speech. Now, Trump is pushing the narrative that if you're a 501c3 not-for-profit and you contest or you say anything against his system, that he's going to shut you down. You won't get grants. you won't be able to work, and he'll brand you a
you could
terrorist.
lose your status as the 501c3.
So,
yeah.
so that's a violation of free speech, and I can tell you that's really scary. I had a boyfriend that was from Syria. His brother was a dentist.
Yeah.
All he said was, "This government is unfair." He said it's your family member. A family member went and told somebody, and the government came and got him and said, "Look, we're going to give you a chance. If you don't leave Syria and never come back, we're going to shut your family business down." And his brother was a dentist, so he had to leave and never come back. The other thing has to do with the narrative. It's difficult as a person of color or anybody to be able to have the right for free speech. If you don't own the rights for production, i.e. a newspaper or a radio, you can't get your narrative out. So one of the things that scares me profusely is folks like Elon Musk, the Washington Post, and other folks changing the narrative and not letting folks have an opportunity. But the other thing that scares me, you know, when I look at Will Javian's daughter, is the ability of folks to shut things down. I used to be a program director on an Air Force base, and I dealt with a lot of Navy commanders. Well, Vance and other folks, and the other guy that wants to be the Secretary of the State, he basically says he doesn't want women in the military.
Right.
And for those folks that are on a Navy base, if you want to be a commander, you have to be on a ship. Well, they want to shut that down.
Yeah.
That's just one example of them sending women back to the dark ages. I'm looking at reproductive rights. So far in New York State, at the moment, women are lucky that they're going to have people protect their reproductive rights. But this is not going to happen everywhere. I look in Georgia of these poor women who are in hospitals who are suffering while they're in labor, and doctors are too afraid to touch them because they've been told, you do anything to help them, we're going to pull your license. We may even charge you with homicide, and these people are dying because they can't get maternal health. And then these male legislators are saying, oh no, you can't even jump to another state, because if you do, we're going to charge you with homicide. And heaven forbid I asked Aaron for a ride to the train station. Now Aaron is going to jail as an accomplice. This is madness takes its toll.
So, Javian, how do you, as a father of a daughter, how do you explain this to her? What do you tell her about this?
Yeah, I mean, for the most part, I like to tell her, you know, definitely what we have is free will, free speech, and nothing should be able to infringe that. You know, I truly believe that the God that we serve is not going to infringe upon anybody's free will or even their inalienable rights. You know, he gives us all free will to pick and choose what we want to do. Yeah, there's consequences to the actions that we choose, but at the same time, it's not my place to say you can and cannot do this. So when I teach her things, I teach her from that aspect. You know, here's a good way to do something, here's a wrong way, a right way, a wrong way. You have a choice to do it, but here's the consequences of both of these actions. So you make your choice and make it wisely.
How do you reconcile that, not just as a father, but like as a person too? I mean, all of us. How do we reconcile that with the fact that like we saw somebody who really doesn't do good and does bad and was made the most powerful person in the world, you know? And it's like it's hard to reconcile that. Like sometimes the bad guys win, and how do we deal with that?
Yeah, it's difficult. I mean, it's something that I truly believe that people do who do get these passes in life, and they do, you know, successfully reach certain goals and altitudes. Like I do believe that eventually one point in time, like whatever's bound to come to them is going to come to them. So I mean, that's kind of how I look at it, and that's how I reconcile it with myself. I'm like, you know, we kind of reap what we sow.
It's like Dr. King's quote about the moral arc of the universe, you know, taking the long view. Dawn, I'll ask you more about that when we come back from the break. This is Martin Luther King Day, And I'm joined by three members of the Oneida County NAACP, Aaron Woodman, Javian Dawson, and Dawn Laguerre. I'll have more. This is the Hot Seat on 95.5 FM The Heat. I'm Ron Klopfenstein. More after the break. Thank you, beautiful. This is Ron Klopfenstein, and you're in the Hot Seat on a Media Monday. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the Hot Seat on this Media Monday. I'm Ron Klopfenstein. Today is Martin Luther King Day, and we're joined by three members of the Oneida County NAACP, Aaron Woodman, Javian Dawson, and Dawn Laguerre. We're also joined by my cough that's come back. And right before we went to the break, well, we're on break actually. Dawn told me that I'm like one step away from being put on the machine. So I'm gonna try to control my cough because I don't want them taking me to Wynn Hospital right here off the air. You know, it's like her results probably turned me away from what I heard. So I don't know. So here we are. It's Martin Luther King Day. You guys have all just come from a luncheon to celebrate his legacy, his dream, what he's all about. What was the luncheon like? What's your mood? Aaron, how are you feeling? You're in you're a college graduate. You're a very involved guy. You're in the community. You're a minority. What do you think?
That luncheon along with a previous event in Rome by the Rome NAACP.
There's a lot of things that happened today.
Yeah, both of them were really good. In fact, we have the Oneida County NAACP has another event.
Oh,
that's
cool.
happening.
Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, that's happening at 6:30 today at Hope Chapel in East Utica on South Street. So
Hope Chapel, 6:30 tonight, and South Street.
Yes.
NAACP, Oneida County.
Yep.
And what is that going to be?
Yeah, so at 6:30 it'll be a march, and then at 7 o'clock it will be a service.
Mm-hmm.
So that will be an event where we'll have a chance to celebrate Dr. King's legacy and really like come together to like learn about it and really like talk about like the message that we want to carry forward as time goes on.
What's that message?
Yeah, so as I like talked about before, it's really about having hope, talking about having unity, and really ensuring that we all like come together and keep it positive too. So, and especially we were talking about like mobilizing each other, and even like that rally on Saturday, it was loud and peaceful.
Yes, it was.
And that's really like one of the core messages that Dr. King really talked about. And even like Javian like talked about like in his answers, like really referencing like God and like a religious aspect to this, and that was really something that Dr. King like grew up on. Like he grew up in the church, like his family was involved, and he
kept
took
going too.
And he was like really a preacher as well. So so he really like took those values and believed that like to get things done, we have to do it in a nonviolent way. And even like all the challenges and even the attacks that he faced, like verbally and physically, like he got his house destroyed. He got assaulted. Like he got stabbed one time before, and like all those are reasons for like, all right, I'm done. I can't. And
actually, like when he died, he was actually like thought of also as one of the most hated people in America too.
Yeah.
People look back and everyone wants to pat themselves on the back and think, back then I would have been marching with Martin Luther King. But like today, it matters what they're doing today, because today the people who are promoting civil rights are the ones that are being attacked by our own government. So Javian, what do you think is going to be like as someone who's deeply involved in the Oneida County NAACP? A nonprofit organization that's about progressive values and inclusiveness and equality. What do you think it's going to be like in your role as in the NAACP going forward over the next 4 years?
Yeah, I mean, I'm prepared for any challenges that I must face. I do believe that, the first time he was elected, it just kind of showcased what was already wrong in America.
Yeah.
So we were able to see an exposure of things that were kind of behind closed doors, and it just kind of became more rampant. So I do believe that this time around, it may be a continuation. Who knows what it's going to be? But for the most part, I mean, I'm prepared for either scenario, but I do believe that if there is an exposure of what is wrong with this country, again, then I think it's going to be a great opportunity for us to really target those issues. That's just like you go to therapy, the first time or the first thing they ask you is, to reconcile or try to figure out like what is wrong with you, and then accepting what is wrong. And then as soon as you accept what is wrong, then you could actually implement some type of treatment for that and start, going in direction towards change. So, I mean, I work in higher education. One of my concerns is definitely, as Dawn was mentioning with ICE and immigration, I work particularly with F1 students who come here on it.
What are F1 students?
So F1 students, for those who are listening, it's a foreign visa that you would get. It's an education visa. Okay. So students who come here to study from foreign nations, different countries, they would come on many different visas, but in the case of education world, they would come here particularly to study as an immigrant on an F1 visa. So they're getting an education visa. So in the last couple of semesters, we've seen a lot of decline in visa applications, like students just getting visa rejections.
Preemptively deciding not to even try?
So what happened is they would go to the United States Embassy that's in their countries, and they would just get visa rejections. So that just means that, they get accepted to the university.
Yeah.
They make their rounds, everything is prepared, but the last step is to get their visa so that they can enter into the country to actually study here. But then they'll even pay their deposit, they'll confirm their seats, they'll go to the visa appointment, get their visa rejected. So then they would tell us, hey, listen, my visa was denied. And I've been seeing a larger number in the past semester.
What do you attribute that to?
I mean, there's so many different factors. I would like to believe that it's not because of this recent election, but it wasn't like this before. There wasn't a huge decline like that, so it could be something contributing or attributed to that. There's many other different factors. Sometimes it could be as simple as them completing the DS-160 form, which is a form that they have to complete that basically has all their personal information. They'll fill this form out before they even go for the visa interview. They could have put false information. It could have been their interviewing practices, going to the embassy. Maybe they were too nervous to really appropriately conduct an interview. I mean, there's so many different factors, but I do think a lot of it.
And what do you think? What impact do you think the Trump administration could have on education in general? I mean, he wants to abolish the Department of Education.
Yeah, I mean, for higher education, I don't really see that as a positive. I'm trying to look at things from a positive perspective, but in that regard,
well, you're doing it. You carved yourself out there quite a difficult niche there.
Because I mean, with that being said, I mean, it's just like you have a whole department that's, their main function is to be the administrator or the overseers of education. So if you no longer have that, then who's going to kind of organize or manage that? I would have to look deeper in the lines to see how it's going to be organized or even managed effectively. If they feel that's something that needs to be cut,
Dawn, what do you think? I mean, he's saying he wants to do all these big changes and stuff, and do you think that if people start to be deported, prices are going to go way up, and if people start coming here for education, we may not see those results immediately, but over time it's going to result in kind of a brain drain. Not only people not coming here to be educated, but also if it takes revenue away from colleges and education. How long do you think it'll be until people, everyday people, start to experience some of the problems that we're going to experience if he does the stuff he wants to do? How long do you think until the price of tomatoes really goes up?
Well, before I get to the price of tomatoes, I used to be program director at Tokyo, and I also worked with international students. And we have the greatest grifter in charge. So one of the things that scares me with those visas is that it's going to be going to the highest bidder. I still want someone to explain to me how his wife, who was a model, mind you, got one of those visas. As if we don't have enough, attractive models that she needed a visa, and the family and
her family too,
and the family needed a visa, and those targets are going to affect people proportionally. I was so shocked. I just ordered something online for clothing, right? And I was so shocked to see a $10 fee for tariffs. already
Wow.
on my bill,
Already.
which is insane. Unfortunately for people,
Yeah.
this is gonna be the generation that's gonna have buyer's remorse.
Yeah.
And when the high price of milk goes up, and when he charges that 25%, and all of those creature comforts that you enjoyed, whether it's milk, food, electronics, hits your pocketbook, you are immediately going to see. And I just want to talk about the other unofficial president, Elon Musk. He is already saying that we don't need people to work, and he's talking about the elite folks. We don't need writers. We don't need computer programmers. We don't even need people in the Amazon warehouses to lift stuff, because he needs folks that are invested in AI with those computers that will put all of the common folks out of work. And this is the same platform that Trump said that would not happen. Oh no, I am for you folks. I will never let that happen. And we already see that Elon Musk, who has the ear of the president, is already plotting policies that don't work for common folks. And they didn't explain tariffs in user-friendly language. When he said artificially that those tariffs was only going to be paid by China and that it wouldn't impact you, we know that that's a falsehood. Eggs are going up already. This feels like, once again, we're back in COVID, where these prices are going up exponentially. Folks don't make enough at fast food to even afford living in an apartment, even if they work full time and have a second job. They have already decimated the middle class. Where can you make $70,000 and basically qualify for food stamps? Even in Utica, $60,000 isn't enough.
I want to ask you a big question here. Like, we're talking about Martin Luther King, and like we see on this day especially, like all the historical stuff, and like a time when like that was a movement of like across the country, hundreds of people come out. I still wonder how come we haven't had that yet. I mean, we're at a time when women are dying really just because they're pregnant and need a routine healthcare thing that they can't get in their state, so the doctors let them die. We're not taking to the street. I mean, I was at the pro-choice rally, but we're not taking to the streets in the hundreds. Like we sort of should be, and I'm wondering, like, why aren't we now?
Well,
I'm going to ask you that too, and then Jada, I'm going to ask you that.
Exactly.
How do we reignite the movement
Right.
to take our country back for all of us?
So what's interesting about that phenomenon is that I remember Martin Luther King coming to my mother's church back in 1965.
How old are you?
We won't
Are
go
you
there.
older than me?
Yes, I am. Yes,
thought
I
you were
am. No, thank you very much.
Oh,
no.
okay. Well, no, I mean, that surprised me because that's like,
No, okay.
Well, good for you.
I'm telling you exactly. But what he did is...
What did he do?
What he did is he united a passion among grassroots groups and mom and pop folks, and he told them what happened, because we go back to 50 years ago. We're talking about the Voting Rights Act. We're talking about Plessy versus Ferguson, where schools were
totally
segregated.
But Dawn, how did he do it though? I mean, what was different then? Was it that there was one person, or like what was different then?
It was a lived experience. So look, for me, I went to school at a time when things were segregated. I remember as a young girl drinking at that segregated water fountain.
Okay.
And more specifically, I went to a religious college, right? Mm-hmm. But this is the strange thing. When I got my roommate, they did it by race. They took a book and they put you by who was, all the blacks with the blacks. And because I was from New York City, I didn't know any different. Yeah. I got a roommate from Rochester who was white, and they were gonna burn my room down.
Wow.
And I got death threats and the whole bit.
So you did have a different
But moreover to that question, it was a living experience for us. So for my son, So for my son, he didn't have that kind of same lived experience because at that point we got college degrees, graduate degrees. We were making money. We were making money, and we tried to do things better for them, so they don't have that same kind of mindset. So when you talk about these things, it's not their lived experience. And the other thing has to do with narrative. They may not listen to me, but they're going to listen to Aaron. They're going to listen to Will, Javian. It has to be centered in their experience, and we have to include them. You know, sometimes us old folks have to move over.
Well, I wonder too, like, you know, especially with LGBTQ rights, like, you know, I lived through the experience of being gay in the 80s and 90s when it was really hard, you know, and I think that it's something that I'll never forget, but younger people luckily don't have it that bad. So I wonder, like, how do you tell people, like, it seems like you both, I mean, Javian and Aaron, both of you, you're younger, you know, you weren't obviously alive during Martin Luther King's time, but you seem to both get it, like what the stakes are, what it was like before, really what we're talking about here. Why is it, I've asked you this, I guess, many times, how are you going to, like, get that message to others? But, like, why do you think that you guys understand, like, what's important and why to be out there that maybe other people haven't caught on to yet?
Yeah, so it comes back down to being educated on those issues and how they
How were you
apply
educated
to you.
on these issues?
Yeah, like how do I?
How did you find out about, how did you grow up watching the news, or how were you? You know,
Oh yeah,
like the news. Very involved in social justice and.
Yeah, so the news is like my starting point. Like that's like if there's like something going on and I want to like get some foundation about like.
But I mean, why is it that you are so involved, and a lot of people your age aren't?
Oh yeah, and I think it comes back down to like experience and what you do at an early age. So like I mentioned earlier, like I've done like like the volunteering work, the community outreach work, and having like mentors around me, like believing in me and saying that you can be successful, you can do great things out there too. So it's also like letting like young people such as myself and Javian know that that we can make a positive difference in our society. It's about like, as like Dawn like alluded to, like having leaders in charge, like let the younger generation know that you can make a difference, like you do have a voice in it. So that like message like resonated with me, and know like, okay, I can do this in the community in this way, like this is what I'm good at, this is what I'm knowledgeable at, and this is how I want to contribute to it and even learn some different subjects here and keep going that way. So it really comes back to like your early experience and who's around you, who's giving you positive messages.
Yeah, how about you, Javian? Is that like your experience too? And then after this, we have to wrap things up soon, but I'll go around one more time. Sure. Do you guys have any last message?
Yeah, I mean, I personally think that everything both Dawn and Aaron mentioned is definitely hitting the nail or head on the nail on the
hitting
head.
The nail on the head.
Yep. So for that regard, I'm looking at like the youth and stuff.
Yeah.
I do believe that we come in a generation, as Dawn mentioned, where things are kind of given to us more so, versus back then when they were actively going through the era where segregation was super prominent. Like right now it might be subtle, but it's still here. But back then it was more like in your face. Yeah. And there was actually laws regarding, you know, certain things, and as she mentioned, narratives that prevented people from accessing certain resources. So in that regard, we may not have those same barriers, but at the same time, it's just understanding that those barriers do exist. Yeah. And I think for me, like how I really got involved to really understand that these barriers exist is because, you know, I definitely traveled out of this area, you know, so to me, I contribute or attribute that to stepping out of your comfort zone. You know, sometimes we become complacent where, you know, we may have everything handed to us, or we think we do, until we actually travel somewhere else and realize like, oh, I really don't have it that good, you know, as I thought I did. It kind of changes your perspective on things. So when I traveled and stuff, I came back to Utica and I was able to better understand what was missing, and also in the inner city what was really missing. So at that point, I was just kind of fueled in bringing that, especially when it came to leadership, knowing that, you know, certain areas of this city or anywhere in general is not going to be dealt with or addressed, or certain issues are not going to be addressed if there's not a representative or like some type of liaison or some type of leadership figure that's addressing those issues directly. So that's what, kind of got me involved in stuff.
Thanks, Javian. John, I want to go to you and then Aaron quick. Is there any last message, any last thoughts you have, any final thoughts about this? It's Martin Luther King Day and the day of the inauguration. And we're feeling a lot of things here.
Right. So for me, what gives me hope and encouragement is these two gentlemen sitting next to me.
Yeah.
And they are terribly humbled. They both have a podcast.
Yep.
Which they spit information regularly to folks.
I
And they
want to
use
be on your podcast, by the way. I was thinking that. I got to ask them that when they're here. I'm always thinking.
Always hustling. Exactly, which is user friendly.
Yeah.
And the other thing is, Aaron goes around to the Senate talking to folks
That's
about
right.
voters' issues and other progressive issues.
Yeah.
Will Javian has his fraternity and other things. He has, and if I'm wrong with pronouncing it, please correct me. Is it a hopeless person? Is it a voteless person? Or whatever.
Hopeless people. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But what it is they are not afraid to go out of the neighborhood and go to different divergent communities and get the word out, and they speak of other issues. And the other thing has to do with media. They're using Instagram, they're using blue whatever. They're hitting folks where they are at, because my folks, quite frankly, we're either still on Facebook or we're still reading papers. They're using narratives and they're using tools and platforms that are getting to folks directly, because quite frankly, nobody picks up a paper these days. It is already.
I found out. When I was at the Clinton record.
Exactly.
Well, they read it online, but that's it. You got to get the message to the people here. Aaron, the message got to you. So what is the message? What's your message for people your age?
Yeah.
Any message to give to maintain hope and to keep moving in a positive direction, to not just survive this, but to survive this in a way that makes us stronger on the other side.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, just know that you do matter.
Yeah.
Everywhere you go, like if anyone tells you or tries to make you feel like you don't matter, just know that you do belong there, and your voice is important as well. So
thank you for that. I can't think of a better way to end this show. Jeez, I cut into your time a little bit here. I'm sorry about that. The pills that Dawn gave me over the break stopped the coughing entirely. I don't know if you noticed this, listeners, but so Cassandra out there, you don't just send me a text. My coughing has stopped, and I don't have to look away from the mic to cough because it's gone. Anyways, I'm happy about that. My guests today were Aaron Woodman, Jerry Davis, Javian Dawson, and Dawn Laguerre from the Oneida County NAACP. I'll have the show online as a video and a podcast on Wednesday. Thank you to my sound engineer, Jonathan Brooks, Jay Easy, and Jim Hale, who recorded the show for YouTube and podcast. Look for it Wednesday at uticaphoenix.net/Media Monday. I'm Ron Klopfenstein, and this has been the Hot Seat Media Monday. Now I'm going to kick things over to Jay Easy for the easy ride home.